What is your biggest secret? I strive to prioritize others' needs above my own, yet I'm haunted by the fear that beneath my carefully constructed exterior lurks the same capacity for monstrosity that defines my family. Story 26. My struggle with body image began at 13, marking the beginning of a journey that continues to shape my life. I rarely discuss it, but I believe my reluctance to pursue romantic relationships stems from a profound lack of self-worth. The seeds of this insecurity were planted through childhood bullying about my weight, instilling a deep-seated belief in my own unattractiveness. During a 3-year battle with depression, I completely abandoned any pretense of self-care. Nothing in my life provided a sense of value or purpose. My college performance paled in comparison to my high school achievements. Unemployment plagued me, romantic relationships remained elusive, and meaningful friendships were scarce. This complete absence of external validation led me to seek comfort in food and entertainment, resulting in an 80-pound weight gain over 2 years. The turning point arrived during a Los Angeles trip with my best friend. While staying with his friend, our Saturday night plans were derailed by my lack of appropriate attire. I had packed only shorts, insufficient for downtown LA's strict dress codes. After multiple rejections from venues, I felt myself becoming a burden to their evening. I suggested they continue without me while I took a solitary walk. My best friend, displaying remarkable emotional intelligence, convinced his friend to end the night early to search for me. That 20 to 30-minute solitary walk through downtown LA proved transformative. Earlier that day, during a Santa Monica bike ride, I had struggled to keep pace with my friends, requiring every ounce of energy just to maintain forward motion. They repeatedly paused, waiting for me to catch up. Reflecting on that trip now evokes mixed emotions. While there were undeniably enjoyable moments, discovering Phil's coffee, late-night meals at Crave, the scenic bike ride, I couldn't shake the feeling of being a burden. Yet this experience catalyzed significant change. Upon returning home, I immediately upgraded my wardrobe, investing in properly fitting slacks and chinos, and began paying attention to my presentation. Though developing healthier habits took longer, I eventually secured employment in my field, earning my first full-time salary. For the first time, I felt valued and wanted in a professional context. My weight loss journey has shown promising progress. From a peak of 315 pounds, I've decreased to 293. My immediate goal targets 275 pounds before the new school term, with an ambitious aim of reaching 250 by year's end. However, dating remains my most daunting challenge. My inexperience paralyzes me, though I recognize that my strongest chance lies in face-to-face interactions, where my people skills and dry humor can shine. Between work, school, and side projects, time seems impossibly scarce. I've decided to postpone actively pursuing relationships until after this academic year concludes. By then, I hope to have made further progress with both my weight and confidence, leaving me without excuses to avoid putting myself out there. Story 27. I love my father deeply. Throughout my childhood, he remained my constant supporter, while my mother, though overprotective of my siblings, seemed indifferent to my existence beyond ensuring my basic survival. The household united in their hatred of my father's blunt, uncompromising personality. When his infidelity came to light, the ensuing chaos and his subsequent withdrawal inflicted deep emotional wounds, destabilizing our relationship. After my mother forced me from our home, my father relocated to Colorado a year later to build a life with someone who accepted him unconditionally. He extends invitations for summer visits, but fear paralyzes me. Fear of my mother's and siblings' judgment, fear of awkward interactions. His departure when I was 11 left me feeling like an alien within my own family. My siblings mirror my mother's personality perfectly, while I am undeniably my father's child. Without his presence, I've become the perpetual outsider. Our extended family has either passed away or been excommunicated due to their opposition to my parents' interracial marriage, my mother being white, my father black. Now that my siblings have evolved into sources of stress for my mother, she's shifted her expectations onto me, anticipating academic and professional success. Yet I feel woefully inadequate for these expectations. Since my father's departure created this void in my heart, everything appears devoid of color or meaning. My only solace comes from the few friendships I've managed to forge. High school has become an exercise in endurance. I'm expected to maintain perfect grades, lead my class, tackle countless AP courses while avoiding subjects I might actually enjoy, and meticulously plan my entire future. Additionally, I'm pressured to target prestigious universities far beyond my financial means while juggling extracurricular activities. I desperately need a mentor, someone to guide me through life's complexities. Instead, I navigate each challenge alone, learning through trial and error. The prospect of senior year looms ominously, and I'm terrified of the inevitable chaos it will bring. This confession has provided much-needed catharsis. Story 28. Last summer, I embarked on a 2-day tour of Chernobyl and Pripyat that would unexpectedly change my life. There, I encountered a girl from Michigan who captured my heart almost instantly. She possessed an enchanting combination of beauty, kindness, intelligence, humor, and a carefree spirit that proved irresistible. When she misplaced her passport within the exclusion zone, I helped her locate it. Our guide, noting our chemistry, mentioned having only one room available for the night and asked if we'd mind sharing. Before I could respond, she readily agreed. We spent that night engaged in endless conversation, sharing our thoughts on everything imaginable. The following day, our connection deepened as we explored Pripyat together, the abandoned city providing an eerily beautiful backdrop to our blossoming relationship. Upon returning to Kiev, we exchanged reluctant goodbyes, both acknowledging the likely finality of our encounter. Back at my hotel, thoughts of her consumed me. Remembering her mention of a train departure that evening, I rushed to the massive Kiev station, spending nearly an hour searching through the crowds before finally locating her. Her joy at seeing me matched my own, and we spent her remaining hours together waiting for her train. When departure time arrived, I helped with her luggage and accompanied her to the platform. Our farewell embrace ended with an unexpected kiss, a moment forever etched in my memory. I recognize the improbability of meeting anyone quite like her again, but I also understand that attempting to contain her free spirit would diminish exactly what made her special. We maintain occasional contact through messages, though I realize another meeting remains unlikely. The financial reality of flying to Michigan from my current location makes it impractical. Yet I harbor no sadness. Meeting her was a gift, and during moments of self-doubt or melancholy, memories of her never fail to lift my spirits. Story 29. While uncertainty exists about whether anyone will read this, I need to express these thoughts. I want to confront my psychologist and family with the truth that I hold my parents responsible for my mental health struggles. Yet terror grips me at the thought of earning my family's hatred. While I wish to avoid causing them pain, I desperately want them to recognize their behavior and prevent similar harm to others. Though this hope likely reflects naive thinking, given their stubborn and selfish nature. A peculiar contradiction exists in my personality. While genuinely insecure about many things, I sometimes feign insecurity about aspects of myself where I actually feel confident, simply to attract attention. The validation I receive from others commenting on my humility provides a guilty pleasure. Even outside of depressive episodes, I make jokes about suicide, hoping to provoke concern from my parents. However, I lack the courage to reveal my ongoing psychological treatment. At age 12, when I mentioned suicidal thoughts, they dismissed them as childish attention-seeking, insisting nothing was wrong with me. Their response to my apparent depression, telling me to stop acting depressed because my younger siblings might emulate the behavior, still fills me with rage. Their manipulative and controlling nature bears responsibility for our collective struggles. The fear of perpetual solitude haunts me, as no man has ever demonstrated genuine romantic interest. While I attempt to accept the possibility of lifelong solitude, my dreams of marriage and motherhood make this reality painful to contemplate. I despise my parents' approach to child-rearing. Their negligence and tendency to tear down rather than build up their children has left lasting scars. Their constant comparisons to other children and criticism of my introverted nature instilled a deep-seated sense of worthlessness. Sometimes I maintain a flicker of hope that someone might choose to share their life with me. However, even if I find partnership, I fear it might end in divorce and damaged children. If I do become a parent, my own parents will never have unsupervised access to my children. I refuse to let them poison another generation as they poisoned me. I want my children to feel loved, proud of their identity, and secure in the knowledge that home provides comfort during life's challenges. I never experienced such security. The manipulation of socially awkward individuals particularly infuriates me, having experienced and still experiencing social awkwardness myself. While I've made progress, it remains a work in progress. All socially awkward individuals desire acceptance, and exploiting this vulnerability marks someone as truly despicable. My cousin pursues an acting career, while another cousin and a former high school friend aspire to become writers. I've always harbored similar dreams of acting and writing, but feel pursuing these ambitions would somehow diminish their opportunities. As for my self-proclaimed best friend, you've proven yourself toxic. Your attempts to tear me down to compensate for your own insecurities forced me to sever our connection for my well-being. Seek help, abandon your superiority complex, and learn kindness. Story 30. My deepest secret lies in the profound emptiness I experience most of the time. I fabricate appropriate reactions, feigning excitement over thoughtful gifts, pretending to be moved by compliments, or displaying sympathy toward others' pain or misfortune. Internally, I feel completely disconnected, as though every human being around me exists merely as a non-playable character in a video game, leaving me incapable of forming genuine connections. The sole exception to this emotional void manifests in my relationship with animals. My empathy for them runs so deep that I've adopted a vegan lifestyle and cannot bear witnessing animal cruelty. Yet when it comes to human suffering, I remain unmoved. Scenes of human injury or mutilation fail to provoke any emotional response. Life presents itself in muted tones, as though everything is shrouded in a gray fog or covered in mold. Food serves merely as sustenance to prevent unconsciousness, offering no pleasure or satisfaction. Guilt overwhelms me when others extend kindness, as I prove incapable of appreciating their gestures appropriately. For as long as memory serves, I've felt like an alien among humans. Others often describe me as kind and empathetic, but this represents merely a well-crafted performance. In truth, I harbor no genuine concern for others. I've simply perfected the art of appearing caring. Story 31. My father, a former pastor, takes pride in his outspoken homophobia. I am bisexual, a truth I've known and suppressed for years. Only my boyfriend shares this closely guarded secret. The prospect of coming out to my family fills me with paralyzing dread. For the first 21 years of my life, my father's hatred defined our relationship. After numerous painful events, we finally achieved a semblance of peace. The thought of losing this hard-won connection terrifies me. My mother presents an entirely different challenge. She embodies the textbook definition of narcissism. Her competitive nature extends even to my personal identity. If I were to come out, she would either subject me to relentless shame or, more bizarrely, attempt to overshadow my revelation by declaring her own bisexuality, inevitably claiming superior authenticity. She would undoubtedly broadcast my orientation to anyone within earshot, then express indignation at my displeasure with her indiscretion. I can already hear her justification. You're my daughter, so I have the right to tell whoever I want. My sister stands as the only family member I truly trust. While she harbors no homophobia and holds my deepest affection, her tendency toward playful teasing makes me hesitant to share this vulnerable aspect of myself. Currently, my boyfriend remains my sole confidant, though I suspect some friends may have their suspicions. The thought of broadening this circle of trust still feels premature. Story 32. Sometimes I find myself wishing for my mother's death, not from lack of love, but from the exhaustion of watching her methodical self-destruction. Since I was 14, her bipolar disorder and anxiety have manifested in increasingly destructive behaviors. When prescription drug addiction loosens its grip, alcoholism takes its place. During the rare periods free from substance abuse, her personality becomes so volatile and withdrawn that meaningful communication becomes impossible. Her self-neglect has reached alarming levels: poor nutrition, chain smoking, and complete disregard for personal care. This past Memorial Day, I visited to find her hair in such a state of neglect that what appeared as simple tangles revealed itself as severe matting against her scalp. I spent 2 hours carefully cutting and styling it, hoping to restore some sense of dignity. Her response? A Britney Spears circa 2007 style breakdown, culminating in shaving off the remaining hair. She steadfastly refuses hospitalization and ignores her prescribed medications, preferring to spend endless hours absorbed in her tablet, never venturing beyond our home's walls. The weight of having a chronically ill mother has become unbearable. Sometimes I want to scream at her, demanding she either end her suffering definitively or allow me to finally breathe freely. The constant strain has left me emotionally depleted. Story 33. I stand at the precipice of relapse, uncertain how to step back from the edge. During winter 2017, my relationship with my body deteriorated significantly. Despite being underweight, I continued to shed pounds, restricting myself to roughly 600 calories daily, if that. Summer brought improvement, largely due to my best friend's unwavering support system. However, as a transgender man, my intensifying gender dysphoria threatens this progress. In fact, dysphoria played a significant role in triggering my initial eating disorder. While my high school's support of my gender identity provides some comfort, it fails to fully address the underlying issues. The toxic mentality accompanying eating disorders has begun to resurface. My already limited appetite has further diminished as I return to skipping meals. The guilt that accompanies any desire to eat has become overwhelming. This struggle exists within a broader context of challenges: attempts to cease self-harm, efforts to overcome alcohol dependency, navigation of a toxic home environment, and management of PTSD symptoms. The cumulative weight of these battles feels insurmountable, and I fear myself sliding back into destructive patterns. Story 34. 3 years ago, beginning hormonal medication as a transgender woman transformed my life in countless positive ways. However, it also intensified my anxiety and depression to nearly unbearable levels. Some days, panic overwhelms me, tempting me to abandon treatment. Yet the truth remains: transitioning has brought unprecedented positive change to my life. Before transition, I existed in a state of quiet desperation. My days revolved around avoiding mirrors, concealing my pornography habits from partners, and engaging in cycles of binging and purging whenever body image issues surfaced. Weekends disappeared into an alcoholic haze, and the future held no goals or aspirations. Transitioning provided a reason to pursue a better life, instilling a sense of self-worth I'd never known. However, the accompanying anxiety and depression sometimes caused me to question everything, including my identity as a trans woman. I hesitate to discuss these doubts, knowing that transgender identity remains poorly understood by many. I fear others might weaponize my moments of uncertainty to discourage my transition, an outcome I definitely don't want. Despite these challenges, transitioning has given me hope. I've developed dreams and goals, significantly reduced my alcohol consumption, broken free from pornography dependence, and occasionally even feel attractive. Transitioning saved my life, even on days when the journey feels overwhelmingly difficult. Story 35. My ex-husband shattered my capacity for intimate relationships. When we met, his heavy drinking masked a deeper alcoholism I failed to recognize. Intimacy felt mechanical, particularly after an early conversation where he labeled me deviant for expressing interest in BDSM. We never developed emotional intimacy, yet my parents, viewing him as financial security, pushed me toward marriage. Money never motivated me. It simply pays bills, but we married anyway, in a ceremony that felt foreign to my desires. Our relationship maintained its coldness. No passionate kisses, no cuddling, no intimate moments in bed or on the couch. My mental and physical health deteriorated as anxiety escalated and body image issues intensified. After his final deployment, situations worsened. He engaged in multiple affairs, faced professional difficulties, and relocated me to Arizona, isolating me from my support system. 5 years ago, on his birthday, a drunk driver struck me, causing severe injuries. I had planned to request separation and return home, but the accident derailed these plans. Recovery consumed 5 years before I finally escaped the relationship. Now, though free, I feel irreparably damaged. Solitude has become so familiar that even basic conversation with age-appropriate men proves challenging. Their inevitable steering of discussion toward intimacy immediately repels me. I feel invisible. While I acknowledge I'm not conventionally attractive, particularly at my current weight, this self-awareness only compounds my misery. The path forward, particularly regarding allowing someone new into my life, remains unclear. Story 36. At 16, I experienced an encounter so mortifying it continues to haunt me. During Christmas celebrations with extended family, I engaged in hide-and-seek with my 8-year-old cousin. Taking my turn to hide, I selected the bathroom, concealing myself behind the shower curtain. She searched thoroughly, even checking the bathroom multiple times, but never thought to investigate the shower. The situation took an unexpected turn when she returned to the bathroom. I anticipated discovery, but instead watched in horror as she secured the door, sat down, and proceeded to have an extremely noisy bowel movement. The sounds and smells created a nightmarish scenario from which I couldn't escape. After what felt like an eternity, but probably lasted 3 or 4 minutes, she finished and departed. I remained frozen in the shower for another 20 minutes, processing the surreal experience. The incident left me feeling awkward and somehow guilty, as though my presence had violated an unspoken boundary. It took considerable time before I shared this story with anyone, finally confiding in my siblings, who agreed this experience should remain our secret. Story 37. I'm haunted by the possibility that I'll never overcome my feelings for a girl I loved years ago, or that she'll remain the only person I truly love. My parents' strict prohibition of dating before age 18 created unique circumstances when, in 8th grade, this girl and I developed mutual feelings. Our connection, while profound, suffered from our youth and inexperience. Eventually, her feelings faded while mine deepened into what felt like genuine love. Now, as rising high school seniors, we maintain a close friendship. While I cherish her presence in my life, it also brings constant pain. Recently, I began talking with another girl through a mutual friend's introduction based on mutual physical attraction. We went on what resembled a date, but after dropping her off, I felt empty. Though this emptiness might stem from our brief acquaintance, it differs fundamentally from my experience with my long-term crush, where friendship preceded romantic feelings, allowing me to appreciate her complete personality before developing deeper emotions. I can't shake the fear that I'm permanently fixated on her, destined to measure all future relationships against this unrequited love. Story 38. Suicidal thoughts consume me daily, with at least 2 intense episodes weekly. Previous hospitalization proved futile. Because my suicidal ideation doesn't present as an emotional crisis, they eventually released me with an anxiety diagnosis and gabapentin prescription, which proves ineffective. My homeless status makes me too high risk for scheduled medications, according to my psychiatrist. These episodes stem from my inability to maintain employment due to dissociative psychosis related to anxiety, Yet unemployment and homelessness prevent proper medical treatment. As an asexual individual, I don't seek romantic partnership. My life goals require education I cannot afford, and I feel like an energy vampire, draining anyone who gets too close due to my complicated circumstances. Self-medication might enable me to maintain employment, but this requires resources I don't have and risks legal complications, particularly with random drug testing. Even completing job applications proves impossible without a permanent address. I survive by performing music for money, though this attracts police attention, complicated by my technically invalid license due to lack of address. By 6 a.m., the friend whose couch I've been occupying needs me gone to avoid landlord questions. After that, I face complete displacement with no viable options. Thoughts of train hopping alternate with contemplation of jumping under one, though concern for the driver's trauma prevents this action. A particular bridge beckons, or perhaps a third-year visit, though that path seems equally futile. While this confession might get lost among others, expressing these thoughts provided necessary release. Story 39. I'm increasingly convinced I would find greater happiness living as a woman. My life lacks passion, and I struggle to distinguish between attraction to women and envy of their existence. My only outlets currently involve internet stories and, shamefully, pornography, particularly niche websites featuring male-to-female transformation content. Now in my mid-20s, with greater independence and privacy, my expressions have intensified. I've invested hundreds of dollars in feminine clothing, shoes, and makeup, all for the fleeting joy of capturing a single photo or finding one angle that makes me appear feminine or attractive. Even intimacy has become complicated, as I fixate on unrealistic, transformation-focused fantasies. I've realized my adult life's lack of motivation stems from this underlying identity crisis. These thoughts occupy almost every waking hour. Dating proves impossible. I once believed I'd meet the perfect woman, but now recognize the futility of this dream. A heterosexual woman seeks a man, and I feel like a flawed approximation of that role. Every attempted relationship fails because something feels fundamentally wrong when I perform masculinity. The idea of engaging with male crossdresser fetishists has begun to appeal to me, solely for the experience of being treated as feminine and desired. I suspect I'll eventually pursue this, though it fills me with conflicted emotions. After years of suppressing my authentic self and attempting to conform to expectations, I've lost sense of my identity. I often wonder who I might have become if born female, or even as a man without these persistent desires. The only certainty is my future holds loneliness and a perpetual sense of incompleteness. Story 40. My wife's unexpected pregnancy announcement triggered mutual panic. The complete lack of planning, combined with our recent marriage and ongoing house purchase, created overwhelming stress. However, my reaction proved far more severe. I experienced a complete mental breakdown, contemplating a return to inpatient care for anxiety management. Though I eventually emerged from this initial crisis and now share her excitement about the baby, profound fears persist. These anxieties differ from typical new parent concerns. I'm not primarily worried about my young age of 22, my parenting abilities, financial pressures, or balancing responsibilities with education. Instead, I'm terrified of passing on my psychological struggles, my anxiety, type 2 bipolar disorder, and history of depression. Having barely survived these challenges myself, the thought of my child experiencing similar battles devastates me. While I recognize my experiences position me to provide understanding and support if such issues arise, this knowledge provides little comfort. Additionally, fears of resembling my father, who failed spectacularly at parenting, haunt me. Though I'm certain I'll never reach his level of inadequacy, the fear of any similarity persists. Meanwhile, my wife has progressed beyond initial panic to genuine excitement, eagerly planning and shopping for our future child, while I remain trapped in a cycle of constant fear. Story 41. I still wish I had followed through with my suicide attempt at 17. The story proves complex, but essentially, I was a deeply traumatized teenager, carrying PTSD from years of severe abuse. When I finally landed in a supportive foster home, I failed to recognize my fortune. My defensive walls, built over years of survival, prevented me from accepting their offered love and stability. Despite desperately craving connection and belonging, I couldn't allow myself to receive it. 16 months later, I realized the necessity of lowering these barriers to receive the love I'd always wanted. However, my realization came too late. I had already pushed my foster family to the point where they discussed my removal with my social worker. I attempted desperate changes, trying to trust them and accept help, but my PTSD screamed constant warnings about safety and potential betrayal. When my social worker collected me from school to announce my impending removal, I recognized I had destroyed my only chance at genuine family connection. The word heartbroken inadequately describes my emotional state. I decided to end my life, mixing various poisons and collecting pills, hiding them in the bathroom cabinet. I wrote a single, deliberately vague goodbye letter to a distant friend, who saw through my attempt at subtlety and contacted authorities. On my scheduled departure morning, I showered, dressed, and locked myself in the steam-filled bathroom. I began consuming the pills, washing them down with burning poison. I failed to hear the knock at the door as police, responding to the welfare check, broke in and rushed me to emergency care. I saw my foster parents only once afterward before that chapter of my life concluded. My life spiraled further. Homelessness, substance abuse, depression, anxiety, and constant survival struggles followed. I relocated to different states, married, experienced relationship failures, and repeatedly fought suicidal urges. Despite occasional close calls, I persist, though I still wish I had succeeded then. I consider how much pain I could have spared myself and others. My husband would likely find greater happiness with someone else, and I've caused significant pain to those I care about. Given another chance, I would handle things differently, not attempting it in my foster parents' home, but instead using my available funds to travel somewhere remote, finding a cliff to jump from or swimming into the ocean until exhaustion claimed me. The profound ache of losing that potential family, combined with subsequent hardships, haunts me. I wish I had possessed greater wisdom, courage, or capacity for emotional connection. I find myself fantasizing about time travel at least once daily. Story 42. In primary school, I enjoyed popularity, despite being overweight. Everything changed when my parents divorced during my 12th year. The impact devastated me, transforming me from an outgoing, happy child into a perpetually miserable presence who sought escape in video games and tears. No one offered lasting support, and that sadness became a permanent companion through subsequent years. By high school, classmates viewed me as the stereotypical depressed nerd. My inability to mask my emotional state likely contributed to social isolation. Multiple relocations throughout my life resulted in lost friendships. I lacked the emotional energy to maintain connections and still struggle to initiate social interactions. While outwardly I appear happier and show improvement from those earlier days, establishing genuine friendships remains challenging. Most of my social interactions remain superficial, limited to brief greetings and short conversations. Residing in one of Warsaw's roughest districts compounds these difficulties. Meeting people proves especially challenging when my conversational repertoire centers primarily around gaming, which has consumed the majority of my life. While I appreciate the opportunity to share these thoughts, I recognize the limitations of my social skills and experiences. Story 1. When I was a child, I committed an act that still haunts my conscience. Armed with a BB gun, I recklessly fired at a metal dog bowl, but the pellet ricocheted with devastating precision into my father's sliding glass door. The impact left an ominous bullet hole, spider-webbing across the pristine surface. Panic seized me as I desperately tried to conceal my transgression. In a moment of quick thinking, I grabbed a piece of gravel, carefully worked it into the bullet hole, and strategically placed it near the door. Then, with calculated deliberation, I fired up the lawn mower and intentionally cut the grass too short. I must have hit a rock while mowing, I explained to my father, my heart pounding beneath my facade of innocence. Miraculously, my BB gun wasn't confiscated, a relief that still makes me grateful to this day. Fast forward a decade, and life has come full circle. I'm now a professional landscaper, and my father regularly hires me to maintain his lawn. My stepmother, ever vigilant, insists I check for rocks before starting. There never are any, of course, but it's darkly amusing how this childhood deception continues to echo through the years. Story 2. In 3rd grade, I received a Harry Potter wand-making kit that would become the catalyst for an unforgettable incident. Filled with childish excitement, I decided to craft it with Slytherin materials, convinced I was creating an instrument of dark magic. My concentration was shattered when my brother barged into my room without knocking, his intrusion igniting an inexplicable rage within me. In a moment of petulant anger, I pointed the wand at him and pretended to cast a malevolent curse. It seemed harmless enough at the time. Later that evening, as my brother played outside, he ascended to the summit of a slide. Without warning, he plummeted from his perch, his arms snapping as he attempted to break his fall. The emergency room visit that followed was a blur of guilt and terror. I became utterly convinced that my makeshift wand had channeled genuine dark magic, that my impulsive curse had manifested into reality. That night, while the house slept in eerie silence, I crept out to the garage, seized a shovel, and under the cover of darkness, buried the wand deep in our backyard. To this day, its location remains my closely guarded secret, and I've never dared to unearth the truth of what happened. Story 3. I harbor a peculiar affliction that I've struggled to articulate. I am completely blind in darkness. Since my earliest memories, I recall sitting on our front porch after sunset, watching helplessly as the world dissolved into an impenetrable void. While others could discern the silhouettes of trees against the night sky, my vision would transform everything into an endless expanse of blackness. I've consulted multiple optometrists, yet their examinations have yielded no explanations for my condition. This mysterious impairment has profoundly impacted my life. I cannot drive after dusk, as the headlights of approaching vehicles blur into a confusing constellation of light, making it impossible to gauge their distance or position. I've kept the full extent of my night blindness hidden from all but medical professionals. To those concerned about my safety, rest assured, I never venture behind the wheel after nightfall, prioritizing not only my well-being, but that of others sharing the road. Story 4. In 4th grade, I experienced my first taste of young love with a girl who lived up the street. Our innocent romance consisted of movie afternoons at her house, where she introduced me to the swashbuckling world of Zorro and the forbidden pleasure of soda, luxuries typically denied to me at home. On my birthday, she thoughtfully gifted me Yu-Gi-Oh cards, cementing our connection. I perpetually promised her a coveted Bratz Pets dollhouse, weaving elaborate tales about already possessing it but being unable to deliver it due to parental restrictions. The truth was far less magical. There was no dollhouse, there never had been. As children's cruelty began to manifest, I found myself the target of relentless teasing about our relationship. Succumbing to peer pressure, I gradually withdrew from her life, ceased visiting her home, and eventually severed all ties. The story takes a darker turn in middle school, where tragedy struck. Her mother passed away, and she developed a debilitating illness. By 8th grade, she was confined to a wheelchair, her once vibrant voice reduced to a whisper. During a school assembly, fate orchestrated a cruel reunion as her caregiver positioned her wheelchair beside my seat. Her friend, with vague recognition, inquired about our shared 4th grade history. In a moment of cowardice that still haunts me, I denied everything, convincing them they had mistaken me for someone else. As I maintained my facade of ignorance, I watched her become visibly distraught, her distress so profound that her caregiver had to escort her from the gymnasium. The final chapter unfolded in senior year, when a message arrived announcing her passing. As news spread, classmates again questioned my connection to her, but I persisted in my denial. This remains my deepest regret, a weight that burdens my conscience daily. Looking back, I'm disgusted by my behavior toward someone who showed me nothing but kindness. Not a day passes without self-loathing for my actions. Since then, I've sworn to never treat another soul with such callousness, regardless of who they are. While I may not deserve to say this, I pray she rests in peace and hope that wherever she is, she can find it in her heart to forgive my transgressions. Story 5. My youngest sister's dream of having a dog materialized in the form of a fluffy Pomeranian we named Kit Kat. However, my larger dogs showed immediate disdain for the newcomer, and gradually, I found myself sharing their sentiment. The puppy remained stubbornly resistant to house training, filled our home with incessant barking, ransacked our trash, and destroyed our belongings. Despite my profound love for dogs and eagerness to offer training assistance, my parents refused, fearing I would form too strong a bond and upset my sister. Kit Kat developed a notorious habit of escaping through the front gate, leading us on exhausting chases through the neighborhood. She never even learned to respond to her name, yet my little sister adored her unconditionally. They were inseparable companions. One fateful night, I carelessly left the gate open, telling myself I'd secure it later. Hours passed before a knock at our door shattered the evening's peace. Our neighbors stood there, cradling Kit Kat's lifeless form. They'd discovered her in the road. Fighting back waves of nausea, I accepted her body, thanked them, and retreated inside. The weight of my negligence crushed me. My laziness in securing the gate had led to this tragic outcome. I wrapped her tiny body in a blanket and broke the devastating news to my sister. She cradled Kit Kat for an hour, her heartbroken sobs echoing through the house. This is a guilt I'll carry to my grave. Story 6. 3 years ago, I faced a life-threatening illness that exposed the true colors of my workplace supervisors. While I lay hospitalized, they attempted to access my confidential medical records under the guise of concern. As a healthcare professional myself, I knew they were fully aware of the ethical breach this represented. Unlike their response to a colleague's car accident a year prior, they never reached out to my husband or visited me. Upon my premature return to work, driven by financial necessity and the need for health insurance, they subjected me to almost daily office summons over trivial complaints. Eventually, they terminated my employment, a decision so questionable that even HR avoided involvement. The situation was further complicated by their willful ignorance of a physician's harassment. This doctor refused direct communication about patients, passive-aggressively dumped documents on my chair instead of following proper procedures, ignored crucial form signatures, and made snide remarks about my personal life, including my religious choices and pet ownership. After dedicating 7 years of unwavering service, I was rewarded with an illness likely triggered by workplace stress, only to be treated like a disposable commodity. The most disturbing aspect is that my nightmares aren't populated by the numerous injuries and illnesses I encountered in my professional capacity. Instead, these three individuals haunt my dreams. While I yearn to confront them about how they destroyed my passion for my work, I remain silent, tethered by the need for professional references. Story 7. At 16, I'm harboring a darkness that consumes me from within. While I experience fleeting moments of joy and am blessed with an incredible girlfriend, an overwhelming sense of hopelessness pervades my consciousness. Even my therapist remains unaware of the dozen different exit strategies I've meticulously planned, should the darkness become unbearable. My mind is a battlefield of intrusive thoughts, vicious, unrelenting demons that make me question my very existence. Every moment is an exercise in overthinking, my heart constantly gripped by the paralyzing fear that my girlfriend will abandon me. My insecurities tower like insurmountable mountains, casting long shadows over any glimpse of self-worth. Adding to my torment is the constant, piercing ring of tinnitus, and relentless drill boring into my skull that medical science seems powerless to silence. What compounds my guilt is the awareness of my privileged life. I've been blessed with extraordinarily understanding parents who've moved mountains for my benefit. The weight of having exploited their kindness in the past gnaws at my conscience relentlessly. The mystery of my relationship status confounds me daily. My girlfriend, 2 years my senior, radiates beauty and attracts constant attention, yet she chooses to remain by my side. Her devotion manifests in countless ways, ensuring I'm properly nourished, supporting my SAT preparations, and maintaining vigilant watch over my well-being. I struggle to maintain a facade of carefree humor, but the mask is crumbling. People are beginning to notice the cracks, questioning my perpetual irritability. But how does one explain the inexplicable void within? Story 8. Solitude has become my constant companion. While I maintain superficial interactions with colleagues, there's not a single soul I truly trust. As an only child, my world is particularly isolated. My cousins have explicitly rejected any familial connection, and my close friends have all scattered across different states in pursuit of career opportunities. In recent years, I've cultivated a profound virtual friendship with someone I met online. Though he's slightly younger, our connection began when I offered guidance with his legal studies and academic pursuits. Over time, our relationship evolved through shared gaming experiences, blossoming into a brotherhood I never had. Here lies my deepest secret. I'm contemplating a life-altering move to Australia, where he resides, simply to be near someone who genuinely values my existence. The notion seems almost absurd. Abandoning the east coast of the United States for the other side of the world isn't a decision to be taken lightly. Yet, my current position offers potential for transfer, and the prospect of finally making a meaningful impact in someone's life, of feeling truly significant to another human being, proves increasingly tempting. This friendship has become my beacon of hope, potentially my gateway to discovering genuine happiness and that elusive sense of belonging I've craved for so long. Story 9. While not exactly a secret, I find myself desperate for guidance. Meaningful friendships seem to elude me consistently. The few I maintain are superficial at best, and recently, one of my closest friends has withdrawn, ceasing to initiate contact or suggest meetings. While we haven't completely lost touch, his apparent loss of interest cuts deep. When I share this struggle, people invariably suggest finding companions with shared interests. Therein lies the crux of my dilemma. I seem to lack any genuine interests or passions. My attempts to discover hobbies have proven futile. Nothing seems to ignite that spark of enthusiasm within me. My academic career came to an abrupt halt following a suicide attempt, resulting in my expulsion from college, a decision that only exacerbated my downward spiral. Sleep has become both my escape and my prison, sometimes claiming up to 16 hours of my day. Medical professionals have found no physical cause for this overwhelming lethargy. While many suggest depression as the root cause, and they're likely correct, I'm already under the care of a therapist and have experimented with maximum doses of various antidepressants. I've tried exercise, even ventured into illegal substances, finding temporary solace in one that I dare not touch again for fear of complete self-destruction. I feel trapped in a perpetual state of stagnation, unable to progress forward, exhausted by the weight of my own existence. Story 10. This confession stems from events that unfolded a year ago, when I was 24. After investing 5 years in what I believed was the perfect relationship, my world shattered. While everyone knows we're no longer together, they don't know the true reason. She had been unfaithful, carrying on a year-long affair before finally confessing and ending our relationship. The cruel irony? I had never been intimate with her, choosing to wait for what I believed would be a special, meaningful moment, while she shared herself completely with another. When the truth emerged, my feelings remained paradoxically unchanged. I still loved her and contemplated forgiveness. Instead, I shouldered the blame for our relationship's demise, shielding her reputation from family and friends. Now, a year later, I continue to endure their reproach for letting the perfect girl slip away. We shared a social circle, and while she maintains her angelic image, I'm viewed as the villain who destroyed everything. The timing couldn't have been more devastating. Mere days after her confession, I lost my beloved dog, spiraling into a haze of alcoholism and tobacco addiction as I struggled to cope with the dual tragedy. Though I've finally emerged from that dark period, having conquered my dependencies and begun rebuilding my life, the only direction left is forward. Story 11. For years, I've been living a lie, concealing my academic failures from my parents while watching my so-called friends drift away. In retrospect, none of them were genuine friends. They've all graduated and moved forward with their lives, leaving me behind. Last year, thoughts of suicide consumed my nights, though they've since faded into a numbing void. I exist in a state of emotional suspended animation, confined to my apartment, watching time slip away until exhaustion grants me the mercy of sleep. My world has contracted to the bare minimum of human interaction, venturing out once or twice weekly for essential groceries, exchanging pleasantries with cashiers, and maintaining the illusion of normalcy through occasional text responses to my parents. 2 years have passed without meaningful human connection. There was one person, during my dormitory days, who showed me genuine kindness, but my paralyzing shyness prevented me from pursuing that connection. My recent attempt to reach out was met with rejection. I find myself trapped in a paradox, too afraid to end my life, yet equally terrified of truly living it. The inevitable discovery of my academic deception by my parents looms like a sword of Damocles, and I've resigned myself to the fact that this revelation will likely be the catalyst for my final exit. Story 12. I grapple with the possibility that I'm asexual, though I question how much of this identity stems from traumatic experiences at age 14. Back then, I became involved in a Skype group connected to a gaming server, where I engaged in explicit role-playing scenarios with men in their 20s. Prior to this, I had shown little interest in romantic relationships. The aftermath left me with a distorted, performative approach to sexuality, viewing myself as an object designed for others' pleasure rather than a person with authentic desires. This warped perspective led me into a 7-month relationship that I maintained solely because I couldn't distinguish between romantic attraction and anxiety-induced butterflies. Physical intimacy remained off-limits. I couldn't bring myself to kiss him, let alone anything more. This mindset persisted until recently. At 19, I've spent the past year attempting to deconstruct these unhealthy thought patterns about relationships and self-worth. For years, I viewed my body as a commodity, something to be maintained for others' benefit rather than my own well-being. My pattern of developing crushes on significantly older men wasn't born from genuine attraction. Rather, their attention served as validation, a way to convince myself of my maturity and significance. The nature of their attention mattered less than the fact that it made me feel valued. Now, I'm finally beginning to discover my authentic self beyond this toxic mindset. University brought new challenges, particularly an overwhelming fear of male peers, especially when 6 of my 10 flatmates were physically imposing men. This fear made the initial weeks nearly unbearable. My identity as a transgender man likely contributes to my delayed emotional development, but those performative, objectifying behaviors only further complicated my journey of self-discovery. I could never reveal this history to my parents. My mother would internalize it as her failure, while my father would respond with unproductive anger. I want to spare them this pain. Currently, I neither seek nor actively pursue romantic relationships. When attractions do occur, they're fleeting and lack intensity. While hormone therapy might alter these patterns, I doubt it will fundamentally change who I am. Yet when I hear friends discuss their passionate crushes and romantic excitement, I can't help but wonder what I'm missing. The experience of genuine, profound love remains a mystery I may never solve. Story 13. I harbor 2 secrets that weigh heavily upon my soul. The first is a profound self-loathing that permeates every fiber of my being. I find myself wishing, with devastating sincerity, that the medical professionals who fought to keep me alive as a premature infant had allowed nature to take its course. While others might perceive me as merely pessimistic, the truth runs far deeper. I genuinely wish I had never existed. My birth mother was explicitly advised against having children, both for medical and practical reasons, and I can't help but wish she had heeded that counsel. The second secret, perhaps more troubling, reveals the depth of my emotional fracture. Despite being male, I've harbored a persistent longing to experience pregnancy and childbirth. This desire has haunted me since childhood, but it's recently resurfaced with overwhelming intensity following a particularly challenging bout of depression. The thought refuses to release its grip on my psyche. Sometimes I wonder if my life would hold more meaning if I had been born female, though deep down, I suspect I would still feel this fundamental brokenness. A therapist might attribute these feelings to unresolved abandonment issues stemming from my birth mother's rejection. Perhaps someone reading this will find solace in knowing their own struggles pale in comparison to my psychological turmoil. I imagine women who have experienced motherhood might mock these feelings, but they represent my truth, however uncomfortable or unconventional it may be. Story 14. An overwhelming dissatisfaction with my life's trajectory consumes me. As a homemaker without a driver's license, my existence feels confined to the narrow parameters of maintaining our home and caring for my husband and our pets. While I cherish these responsibilities, I yearn to break free from this self-imposed bubble and pursue something meaningful. My passion, though it might seem peculiar to others, lies in chicken farming. I dream of hatching and raising chickens for sale, with detailed plans encompassing everything from coop designs to breed selection. However, financial constraints keep this dream perpetually out of reach, particularly as my husband channels our discretionary income into his automotive pursuits rather than supporting my entrepreneurial aspirations. Undeterred, I've begun taking on small online tasks, translation work, survey completion, and text transcription. My earnings so far amount to a modest $17.21, roughly a quarter of what I need for an incubator. Once acquired, I plan to purchase eggs from popular breeds, hatch them, and sell the chicks, gradually building my business from these humble beginnings. I've kept these ambitions private, knowing they would likely be met with skepticism or ridicule. Previous attempts to share my dreams have been met with laughter or dismissive comments about my capabilities. Yet beneath my silence burns a determination to prove them wrong, to transform this seemingly modest dream into a thriving reality. Story 15. Within our social circle, I'm known as the perpetually confident one, always ready with a joke and unfailingly supportive of others in their times of need. Yet beneath this carefully constructed facade lies a desperate longing for someone to offer me the same unwavering support I provide to others. I battle severe separation anxiety, a legacy of childhood trauma that manifests as a constant internal struggle between anxiety and depression. Some days, thoughts of ending my life intrude, driven by the belief that my departure would free others from the burden of my emotional dependence. Other times, my mind becomes a prison of obsessive thoughts about abandonment, convinced that those I hold dearest will inevitably vanish from my life. My tendency to cling to people isn't a conscious choice. It stems from a deep-seated distrust in others' willingness to remain in my life voluntarily. This fear drives me to hold on with suffocating intensity, believing that if I maintain a tight enough grip, they won't be able to leave. While I've confided in close friends about my separation anxiety, I've never revealed its true depth and impact. The thought of burdening them with my complete reality or causing them unnecessary worry prevents full disclosure. I'm genuinely committed to managing this condition, even when progress seems impossible. This battle may span my entire lifetime, but I'll persist. The exhaustion of watching people walk away because of this struggle weighs heavily on my soul. Story 16. 1 month ago, I made the decision to discontinue my bipolar medication. While my friends are aware of this choice and believe I'm managing well, the reality is far more disturbing. Hallucinations have become my near-constant companions, delusions are steadily creeping back into my consciousness, and my thoughts grow increasingly fragmented and disorganized. Intrusive thoughts assault my mind with relentless fury, while my impulsive behaviors escalate at an alarming rate. The prospect of spending summer with my mother, who harbors her own form of instability, fills me with dread. That house holds the darkest chapters of my mental illness, and I fear returning there might push me beyond my breaking point. Simultaneously, I'm attempting to adapt to life with these hallucinations, acknowledging their persistent presence even during my medicated years. Their nature fluctuates with the lighting, sometimes appearing benevolent, other times malevolent. My therapist supports this medication-free journey, particularly given my 6-year history of pharmaceutical intervention. While hope exists for successfully navigating this transition, I'm haunted by the possibility of regressing to my teenage state, overwhelmed by hallucinations, engaging in self-harm, and completely incapacitated. The thought of returning to that dark place terrifies me, yet I feel powerless to prevent it. Story 17. 15 years ago, during our early 20s, my best friend and I spent an evening drinking at a bar. At the time, she lived with her parents and twin brother, the latter having always made me uncomfortable with his inappropriate touching and leering glances at my chest, behavior I endured for the sake of our friendship. That night, after returning home, I went upstairs to her room to change into sleepwear while she remained downstairs. Her room shared a connecting door with her brother's, and while changing he entered, inquiring about his sister's whereabouts. After I informed him she was downstairs, he left, allowing me to finish changing and settle down to sleep on the floor. However, he returned later, proceeding to fondle my breast and attempt to remove my clothing. I believe the only thing that prevented further assault was my menstruation and use of a tampon. Paralyzed by fear, I feigned sleep and turned away from him until he eventually abandoned his predatory pursuit. To this day, I've never revealed this incident to my best friend. Having experienced similar trauma herself, knowledge of her brother's capacity for such behavior would devastate her completely. I've maintained the facade of alcohol-induced memory loss regarding that night, and I doubt I'll ever disclose the truth. Even my husband, to whom I was married both then and now, remains unaware of this violation. This secret is further compounded by similar experiences with cousins during my younger years. Experiences I've also kept buried within my psyche. Story 18. I've developed an undeniable attraction to my apartment complex's property manager, a man approximately my age who I suspect might reciprocate these feelings. Despite my crippling shyness and severely limited social skills, I've been making concerted efforts to initiate conversations rather than simply offering a passing wave when he drives by. This proves challenging. The natural inclination when harboring a crush is to engage in conversation, yet my social awkwardness transforms each interaction into a potential minefield of embarrassment. The frustration of fumbling through these encounters is palpable, yet he maintains an endearing sweetness, consistently inquiring about my well-being or my current reading material, his face illuminated by the most charming smile upon seeing me. Last week, he surprised me with a thoughtful gesture, presenting me with a coconut-flavored frozen fruit bar, which was absolutely delicious. Such a specific and personal gesture suggests I occupy his thoughts in some capacity, an idea that fills me with giddy excitement. Somehow, despite my social limitations, I must be doing something right. I've resolved that during our next encounter, I'll attempt to flirt more overtly, assuming I can summon the courage. I apologize for this rambling confession, but my feelings for him consume my thoughts. The complete chronicle of our interactions could likely fill volumes, each moment preserved in vivid detail within my memory. Story 19. This narrative may prove challenging for some to process. At 15, I found myself irrevocably drawn to someone who claimed to be just 3 years my senior. At least, that's what he led me to believe. In my naive infatuation, I fell completely under his spell. He became my first everything, treating me initially like royalty, orchestrating candlelit dinners, facilitating family introductions, crafting the perfect fairy tale romance. The illusion shattered a year and a half later when I discovered I was pregnant. Rather than responding with joy or support as I'd hoped, he transformed into a monster. His violence escalated to such severity that I suffered a miscarriage. The nightmare continued as he repeatedly appeared at the hospital, threatening both me and the staff, necessitating my transfer to a different facility. It was only after security forcibly removed him and charges were filed that the full truth emerged. He wasn't 3 years older, but nearly 6, with a documented history of domestic violence. At 16, I lost not only my child but also my innocence. The hospital, citing the pregnancy's non-viability, didn't even offer me the opportunity to see or properly lay my baby to rest, simply allowing a brief moment of grief before disposing of the remains. This traumatic chapter remains known only to my immediate family and current partner. I've carried this burden silently ever since, the weight of it never truly lifting from my shoulders. Story 20. 6 years of marriage, preceded by 9 years of partnership, have led to profound discoveries about my wife's identity. She's gradually revealed herself as asexual, aromantic, and increasingly aligned with a gender identity. She binds her chest when venturing out, yearns for breast reduction or complete removal, and maintains a masculine appearance with closely cropped hair, often buzzed at the nape. Her presentation stands in stark contrast to my own nature. My sexual and romantic orientation couldn't be more different from hers, creating an underlying tension that fills us both with guilt. Neither of us can control our fundamental nature. I strive to avoid controlling behavior. When she expresses desire to further masculinize her appearance, I honestly share my struggle with the aesthetic while ultimately supporting her autonomy. It may seem superficial, but increasingly, our relationship feels more like a partnership between men than a traditional marriage. While I can appreciate male attractiveness, my orientation doesn't align with same-sex attraction. The deeper complexity lies in our genuine love for each other. I frequently remind myself that fixating on these challenges serves no purpose. The prospect of losing her terrifies me. I question my ability to function without her presence in my life. Some days prove harder than others, and I suspect my 26-year battle with depression, managed through 12 years of antidepressant therapy, compounds these struggles. Yet I persist in making our relationship work because my love for her transcends these obstacles. Story 21. My love for my boyfriend runs deep and true, yet I'm planning our separation. Not due to any fault of his, but because of my own profound self-hatred. My body image issues have reached such severity that being unclothed in his presence, or even partially dressed, triggers near panic attacks and brings me to the brink of tears. The shame I feel about my appearance is all-consuming. This psychological barrier, has severely impacted our intimate life. My insecurities extend beyond physical appearance. I've become terrified of displaying any emotion, even happiness, fearing that an unflattering expression might finally reveal my perceived ugliness to him. At 55 kilograms and 175 centimeters, I perceive myself as grotesquely overweight. I've contemplated confessing these feelings, but fear his inability to understand. And more importantly, I can't bear the thought of causing him pain. He deserves complete fulfillment in his relationship, not someone crippled by insecurity and self-loathing. I've already begun distancing myself from my closest friends in anticipation of summer, knowing they'll invite me to social gatherings and swimming activities. The thought of exposing any skin is unbearable. For years, I've chosen to swelter in heavy clothing rather than reveal my body. My friends and boyfriend consistently encourage me to dress more appropriately for the weather, but their well-intentioned suggestions only intensify my anxiety. This pattern of summer isolation has persisted for 6 years. Self-harm entered my life at 18, and now at 21, I'm desperately seeking change. I've embarked on a diet targeting a 15 kilograms weight loss, clinging to the belief that achieving this goal will finally bring happiness and allow me to embrace life fully. Yet deep down, I question whether any physical transformation can heal these psychological wounds. Story 22. An overwhelming fear of life and impending adulthood consumes me. The prospect of independence and self-sufficiency looms like an insurmountable mountain. Despite having wonderful parents, their tendency to shelter me as the youngest child has left me ill-equipped for adult responsibilities. While I maintain basic courtesy and avoid entitled behavior, at 21 I find myself paralyzed by my lack of independence. The mechanics of adult life, financing college education, establishing a career, and general adult functioning feel like foreign concepts. My knowledge of fundamental processes like tax filing, rent payments, and credit management remains woefully inadequate. Even the seemingly simple task of registering for classes without assistance feels overwhelming. Though I yearn for independence and knowledge, the mere attempt at self-sufficiency triggers paralyzing fear. To outside observers, including my friends, I present an image of competence similar to my older siblings, who have established successful careers and stable lives. However, beneath this facade, my life feels like a house of cards on the verge of collapse. This perpetual fear of failure has become a self-fulfilling prophecy, preventing me from taking the very steps necessary for growth and independence. Story 23. I don't know if these words will find an audience, but I'm grateful to anyone who takes the time to read them. My secret lies in my profound inability to navigate life's challenges effectively. While my family and friends perceive a semblance of stability in my life, reality tells a vastly different story. An inexplicable barrier prevents me from maintaining consistency or self-discipline. I constantly seek escape through gaming or YouTube rather than confronting my responsibilities. I question whether I suffer from depression, ADD/ADHD, or some other underlying condition, partly hoping for a diagnosis that would explain my struggles. I've even initiated therapy, secretly hoping for an ADD/ADHD diagnosis that might lead to Adderall prescription. Having used it illicitly before and experienced significant improvement, I recognize the unlikelihood of obtaining it legally due to contraindicated conditions and subtle symptoms. My academic performance reflects a pattern of minimal effort, leaving me in a constant state of stress even during periods of relative calm. Enrollment in a prestigious university program only amplifies my feelings of inadequacy and inability to match peers' dedication. My former belief in my potential for greatness diminishes daily. The recent end of a 2.5-year relationship compounds my struggles. Despite my ex-girlfriend's kindness and dedication, I failed to reciprocate adequately. I harbor guilt over wanting a less demanding relationship with someone I found more physically attractive. Thoughts that shame me, knowing she represented the best partner I'm likely to find. Her attempts at reconciliation meet my resistance, despite the heartbreak this causes. She deserves better than what I can offer. My self-esteem has reached an all-time low. While others perceive me as sociable and humorous, I feel fundamentally incapable of meaningful connection. The prospect of meeting someone new in a social setting and developing a relationship seems increasingly impossible. Currently, my relationship with life itself has soured into something approaching hatred. Story 24. A decade ago, at 13, I committed an act that continues to haunt my conscience. During an ill-advised drinking session with my best friend and his neighbor, our judgment severely impaired. We witnessed the neighbor attempt to bicycle down a hill toward a makeshift ramp leading to a river. On his second descent, my friend handed me his hunting air rifle. Not a toy, but a weapon capable of serious harm, and wagered I couldn't hit the neighbor's helmet during his descent. Accepting the challenge with alcohol-addled confidence, I took aim with one arm, squinted through my compromised vision, and pulled the trigger. The neighbor's bike flipped just before reaching the ramp, and he remained motionless on impact. Racing to check on him, we found him clutching his head, blood seeping from beneath the helmet. The pellet had found its way through the helmet's ventilation slots, striking him directly in the skull. During his emergency hospital transport, we remained under supervision until we sobered up. Upon emerging from surgery, he had no memory of who had fired the shot. My best friend's alcohol-induced blackout left him equally uncertain. I alone retained the complete memory of events, and in a moment of panic-driven cowardice, I blamed him. I fabricated a story for the police, claiming he had looked at me, said, "Watch this," and pulled the trigger. My false testimony resulted in his 18-month juvenile detention sentence. The guilt of this betrayal has rendered me incapable of facing him since. Even now, as he attempts to rebuild our friendship, I'm overwhelmed by remorse. He remains unaware that I framed him for my crime. His life spiraled following his detention. Family relationships deteriorated, romantic connections proved unsustainable, and he cycled through the system repeatedly. Today, he stands largely alone in the world, his isolation tracing back to the lie I told as a terrified 13-year-old. Story 25. I harbor a confession that fills me with shame. I hate my family. The admission pains me deeply, as I desperately wish to embody the role of a loving, understanding daughter capable of overlooking their flaws. But the reality proves far more complex. As an adult child of narcissists, I've witnessed my older sister's elevation to golden child status while she maintained her role as my tormentor. My older brother, battling schizophrenia, has made numerous attempts on my life through various means. Both my siblings suffer from diagnosed conditions, while I maintain relatively good health. Perhaps this disparity led my parents to channel their abuse specifically toward me. The atrocities they inflicted left indelible scars on my psyche. I watched helplessly as my siblings received the love and respect I could only dream of experiencing. Eventually, the hope of earning their affection withered and died, compelling me to escape their toxic influence. Every few months, I attempt reconciliation, searching for any reason to maintain family ties. Yet each encounter serves only to reinforce the wisdom of my departure. They remain unchanged, trapped in their destructive patterns. Years have passed, and I frequently question whether some fundamental flaw exists within me as well. We share the same genetic blueprint, after all.